In the past few days, we have had so much happen in the Call of Duty League. Today, in this video, we are going to catch up on all of it. Here's everything you need to know about Black Ops 6 ROSTERMANIA. Real quick, I'm going to give a shout out to all of the awesome pages who have been doing so well over the last few seasons of keeping people up to date with all of the ROSTERMANIAs. I think CDL Scrim Intel's name is Ronnie, so shout out to you, Ronnie. But he has been dropping banger after banger of information for ROSTERMANIA. But we'll get into that here in a second. The big thing that I want to point out first in this video is that we now have the Vegas Falcons. Team Falcons is in the COD League. They have bought Vegas Legion's spot and have started the Vegas Falcons. Of all the drama that's been on the Twitter timeline, I'm not even going to pretend to exist. I'm just going to say what I think. I think this team is going to struggle very much early on. And once they're going to see that maybe there was a route that they could have taken a little bit differently with this team. I'm all for a regional based team that is from a team that is regionally based, such as the Saudi Arabia team, bringing in a local team and allowing them to be able to compete, really expanding that worldwide mindset for the Call of Duty League. Now, I'm not really listening to anyone's argument that is defending them at the Esports World Cup. They got demolished at the Esports World Cup, and they were obviously miles behind everyone else. And that is probably because of the competition they have in their area. So I'm not trying to be all Debbie Downer that they're coming into the CDL. I think that they can eventually get there. Anybody can if you work hard enough. But my point is, starting off day one Black Ops 6 with your roster that you have from the Esports World Cup, I don't think that's going to work out in their favor. I think it's going to be bad. And then because they're starting this way, it's probably going to have a bad start. Thus far is going to make the team maybe make a rash decision and then blow it up before they even really had a chance to try to do anything. Obviously, the best thing is I've been seeing this option go around. I agree with it, is to just start them in challengers, keep maybe some of the Vegas Legion roster, and then let that be your forefront. And then when these guys are ready, boot them up to the pros and see if they fry. The Ghost of Hope also talked about how Fnatic and Gen G are going to be returning to Call of Duty competitive scene with Black Ops 6. He says they're going to be replacing the Carolina Royal Ravens and the Los Angeles Guerrillas. LAG, we knew this was happening. They've been trying to get out forever, and it's honestly for the better because when you're trying to get out and you're not really wanting to be there, that's when you're not really paying the players enough, and you're considered the dumpster org, where if you didn't have another spot anywhere else in the league, you end up there. But they were still able to somewhat invest in younger players last year. Fame is still relatively young. Flames, of course, his rookie year. Diamond, who's been a guy around a little bit since Cold War, and he got another good chance to play a lot. And then Estriel, of course, who is a potential Rookie of the Year type caliber player. Many people had him in their pick winning it. I think he was close. However, they are going to be shutting it down. They're done. And Fnatic or Gen G are going to be returning for one of them. And then Royal Ravens seem to be doing that as well. He also pointed out how the Boston Breach will be running it back despite poor results and unstable financial backing. So essentially, there's a chance Boston stays. They were shut down. It seems they're coming back. We've seen other evidence of that. And so who knows? But I do think it's cool seeing these older organizations and even more popular worldwide esports organizations getting into Call of Duty. I think they're going to take it seriously and try to kind of have that pride of being able to come into this scene and make something happen. So they're probably going to put a big investment in it. And it's going to be better for the players and better for all the fans watching. You can go to Dexterto Esports and see that they have a ROSTERMANIA, all the rumors, all the official things that have happened and changes that we've had so far. So instead of going down one by one on Twitter and just reading all the different ones, we're just going to point it out. The Carolina Royal Ravens released Beans and TJ Halley. I do think that this is somewhat of a misconception. A lot of people are surprised, like I initially was, like how in the world do you drop potentially your two most consistent players out the whole year? Even though Gwen won Rookie of the Year, there were still a few times he was inconsistent, but these two guys were balling out. And even if Beans wasn't as inconsistent, I think he has the highest ceiling of every player on that roster. But we were able to see from their coach and GM, Brian Saint, that he was explaining how when a contract of somebody is up, they become a free agent. It's just kind of like what it is. It's the same for other sports. And he even mentions LeBron James. You know, LeBron was in Cleveland for the first time, and then he goes to Miami and forms the super team. Cleveland did not release LeBron. He just decided when his contract was up and he was a free agent, he was not going to come back. And he told the team that, so he went to Miami. And that very much could have been what TJ and Beans did. It also makes a lot of sense that people like Beans, Fame for Vegas, Estriel, and Diamond for Minnesota. It just kind of makes sense that maybe they were only on the team to play the Esports World Cup. And then after that, just signed a short little contract. They're free agents anyway, so it doesn't necessarily mean that they got dropped. Minnesota announced that they have dropped accuracy, but then also the big one that I think, like I mentioned in my previous video, is going to shake everything up. Insight announces that the Toronto Ultra are allowing him to check out different options and see what could be his best fit moving forward, meaning he is a restricted free agent, which means Toronto can bring him back if they desire, but if another team makes an offer, they can choose to let him go, which this is kind of, I think, the biggest staple of all free agency. With Toronto potentially blowing it up, Insight might not even be the last one that makes a big deal. They decided to tell him sooner, or he decided to go ahead and come out and talk about it, but they could be the ones that make a big impact because Insight is a high caliber player. B+ at minimum for across the whole league. So he is going to be a key free agent joining a different team for next season. He's one of those players that can make one of those 5 teams, 6 teams, people right outside the top 4 bump in and be a competitive, challenging the top 4. And then, of course, it's who goes in place of Insight. Who's going to go to Toronto with those 3? Or is Envoy going to drop out too? Is Kleenex going to go? Is Scrap going to try to force himself to get to a better team and maybe form a super team? We've seen all these rumors and speculation. Toronto is very much, I think, open to a lot of different moves, and they're just going to kind of play the field and see what happens before they start building their roster. But from CDL Scrim Intel, we are able to see a lot more things kind of make sense. Nero and Geo are also free agents from Vegas. Attach is the only one who is not, which makes me think that if they knew this whole deal of the Falcons buying Vegas spot and getting into the league, this has probably been in the works for a little bit longer than people think. And so for Fame to be a free agent, Nero's a free agent, Johnny was let go, Geo was let go, all these guys are free. But Attach, the rumor is that his contract was picked up and he will still be on that roster for the next season, the team that owns him. So my thoughts are that Falcons do have him, and they're either going to try to shop him around and be able to see what they could do with that, or maybe keep him on the steady go just in case they want to play him in Black Ops 6. It will be kind of criminal to keep him on the roster and then not start him when he's a still high enough caliber player. He can go get a spot on many teams in the league. So who knows what they're going to do there. But it has not been officially announced that he's been released. I guess it could still happen. But Falcons have come in and announced their team of 4, and there's nowhere to see Attach. And even as you can see here on this free agent tracker, Attach is still on roster for Vegas Falcons. There was also a lot of speculation in the rotation with his sources shared how Ghosty will probably be sticking with 100 Thieves, which I think is the best move. This guy is an absolute superstar, and it is the absolute utmost important thing that they can do is to bring him back. Even though he didn't have the greatest esports World Cup, he is still a superstar caliber player, can win you series by himself with his play. So he definitely needs to come back. It's good for them to do it. Now, what are the LA Thieves going to do with their other roster members? I have no idea. It's one of the biggest mysteries. I think the best thing for them is to just kind of play it safe a little bit, play the field, and see what happens and what other teams make changes. Because if not many other teams make changes, if Insight is the only one dropped from Toronto and they pick up someone big, or if New York doesn't make any changes, if OpTic and FaZe, of course, are not going to make any changes, then I would definitely try to keep that team together potentially, because those guys were able to go toe-to-toe with some of the best teams. Very competitive in the Esports World Cup final against FaZe, and then they almost 3-0'd OpTic in champs. Almost did it. And so they have a lot of potential considering what they started the season as. And so I definitely think that there's a way you could consider keeping them together with Nasty, Jodas Thieves, and Crimp. We'll just have to kind of see what happens. I think they're just going to play it back a little bit, see what happens, and then go from there. We are seeing that the free agent Cobra could be joining the Minnesota Rocker. I definitely agree with Ben J here that this is way too soon to be signing players. I think Falcons is the only exception because they have been able to kind of get this together and they already have a team. However, I mean, you've really got to make sure you see what happens here, because this is a typical Minnesota Rocker type move, just to go ahead and sign a guy August 19th when free agency has started, and we haven't even got a Black Ops 6 beta. And lastly, just more so talking about the expansion for different CDL teams. The rotation talked about how Team Liquid and Space Station Gamers are also names that have been floating around. Space Station's been going around for a couple of years too, just like the Falcons have. But Falcons have completed it. He said here, done deal, announcement soon. The others are not. And then sure enough, it was not too much longer until the Falcons have officially made their announcement. But is the CDL going to expand? Are people going to eventually be able to join and have more teams? Can we eventually hit that 16 team number that we know will just be so crucial and amazing for the league? Or are we going to continue staying at 12 and so many players who deserve a chance to be in this league not have a chance to be in it? Who knows? We'll have to see. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay up to date with all the ROSTERMANIA things. We're going to be covering it all off season. We're also going to be having on the channel Black Ops 6 gameplay, early access, all the good stuff. So make sure to subscribe so you can catch up with all this big stuff that's going to be happening in the Call of Duty scene. Thank you guys for the support. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next video.